Welcome to our new episode, The Vanishing Fortress, the forgotten mystery of Fort Jefferson. It was a moonless night in the Florida Keys, 1873. The wind howled across the desolate waters, carrying with it the distant echo of cannon fire long gone. At Fort Jefferson, the massive brick fortress rising from the Gulf of Mexico like a phantom, something inexplicable was happening. A guard stationed at the northern parapet swore he saw lights flickering deep within the abandoned cells that had not held a prisoner for months. By morning, 2 men from the garrison had vanished without a trace. And yet there were no signs of struggle, no footprints in the sand, and the sea around the fort remained eerily calm. What had happened that night? And why, nearly 150 years later, does the mystery of Fort Jefferson continue to baffle historians and cryptologists alike? Chapter 1. The Fortress Rises. In the early 1840s, the United States government embarked on an ambitious plan to fortify its southern coastline. After years of debates and surveys, the site at Garden Key, a small island in the dry Tortugas archipelago, was chosen. Its strategic location, approximately 70 miles west of Key West, offered control over shipping routes entering the Gulf of Mexico, a region critical for trade and defense. Construction began in 1846 under the supervision of Major Robert Anderson, who would later gain fame at Fort Sumter. The plan was grandiose, a hexagonal fortress of brick and concrete, large enough to house nearly 1,500 men, equipped with heavy artillery capable of controlling the surrounding waters. Yet the project was plagued from the start. The remote location made transporting supplies a logistical nightmare. Hurricanes frequently battered the construction site, washing away portions of brickwork and leaving soldiers stranded for weeks. Disease, particularly yellow fever and malaria, ravaged the workforce. By the late 1850s, after more than a decade of construction, Fort Jefferson was still unfinished. The fortress stood as a paradox, an engineering marvel visible for miles across the turquoise Gulf, yet largely abandoned and incomplete. Despite these setbacks, the fort would soon find a purpose that would thrust it into the darker corners of American history. Chapter 2. Prisoners of Isolation. When the Civil War erupted in 1861, Fort Jefferson's strategic value shifted. While it never faced a Confederate assault, it became a federal prison for Confederate deserters, captured privateers, and the occasional high-profile traitor. The isolation of the dry Tortugas, a 2-hour boat journey from the nearest populated island, made escape near impossible. One of the most famous inmates was Dr. Samuel Mubb, the physician convicted in conspiring in the assassination of President Abraham Lincoln. Mudd's presence at Fort Jefferson would later be cited in bizarre anecdotes. Guards reported mysterious shadows in the halls at night. Some claimed to hear the sounds of footsteps and coughing in empty cells. A few journals hint that Mudd conducted secret experiments, though details were deliberately vague, possibly due to censorship or embarrassment. These accounts, mostly dismissed by historians, laid the foundation for the fortress's eerie reputation. But nothing compared to what would happen after the war, when Fort Jefferson transformed from a prison into a near-abandoned military outpost. Chapter 3. Lights in the Dark. In the post-war period from 1866 to 1875, it was relatively quiet. A small garrison maintained the fort, primarily for mapping, navigation, and occasional protection of American shipping interests. Yet reports from this period are strange and unsettling. January 1873 was particularly notable. Newspaper reports from Key West mention, "Observers from the harbor note strange lights dancing within the fort after midnight. Several men have disappeared from their posts, only to reappear days later, claiming to have no memory of the intervening hours. Official military records attempted to dismiss these incidents as the result of heat stroke, isolation, or hallucinations caused by tropical diseases, but the patterns were persistent. Multiple guards vanished simultaneously for hours, sometimes days. No evidence of escape or foul play was ever found. Disappearances often coincided with stormy nights or unusual tidal patterns. A surviving diary of Sergeant Elias Whitman, stationed at Fort Jefferson in 1873, offers a chilling glimpse. "I had taken my watch at the north wall. The moon was swallowed by clouds, and the fort was silent except for the waves. Then I saw them, small pinpricks of light moving unnaturally across the yard. I called to Private Duval. He blinked, and suddenly he was gone. I ran, calling his name, but the lights vanished, and only the echo of the sea remained." Whitman's account is only one of many that would later inspire cryptographers, paranormal investigators, and curious historians alike. Chapter 4. The Vanishing Garrison. The most famous incident occurred in September 1873. 3 men, 2 soldiers, and 1 civilian contractor disappeared in one night. Witnesses reported seeing them enter a corridor leading to the Western Watchtower. That was the last anyone saw of them. When a search party scoured the fort by dawn, their bunks were empty, personal effects remained untouched, and there was no sign of struggle, and the fortress gates remained locked from the inside. The Navy conducted an investigation. Official reports, now housed in the National Archives, concluded no evidence of abduction or escape could be found. The disappearance remains unexplained. Interestingly, this period also coincided with secret experiments in medicine and isolation techniques conducted under the supervision of military physicians. Some modern researchers speculate that these experiments, combined with the fort's extreme isolation, could have contributed to mass hallucinations, or worse, something far more sinister. Chapter 5. The Secret Experiments. The historical record is sparse, but some letters and journals have survived. Military physicians concerned with yellow fever and scurvy experimented with various treatments. Isolating prisoners in cells for extended periods to study psychological effects. Administering experimental medications derived from tropical plants. Observing neurological responses in patients with fevers and delirium. One surviving report, written by Dr. Robert Hamilton, hints at ethical ambiguity. The subjects show promising results. Some display unusual sensitivity to nocturnal stimuli, reporting visions or lights. Further observation is warranted. Care must be taken to avoid panicking the garrison. Historians argue that these nocturnal stimuli could explain the recurring lights and vanishing incidents, but skeptics note that the accounts were deliberately vague, leaving a fertile ground for mystery and speculation. Chapter 6. A Fortress Full of Ghosts? By the 1880s, Fort Jefferson was largely discommissioned. A skeleton crew maintained the fort, which slowly decayed under relentless tropical storms. Yet even then, strange occurrences persisted. Guard rotations often reported sudden chills and unexplained whispers. Ships passing by occasionally logged lights flickering in abandoned windows. Local fishermen claimed that the fort sometimes seemed to vanish entirely in heavy fog, only to reappear miles away, a phenomenon never scientifically explained. Paranormal investigators today argue that these are classic cases of residual hauntings, while historians tend to attribute them to optical illusions, isolation, and tropical mirages. Whatever the truth, Fort Jefferson had earned a reputation as America's most enigmatic fortress. Chapter 7. The Night of September 21, 1873. The night of September 21, 1873 would be etched in the annals of Fort Jefferson's history. Witnesses from the small garrison recalled a heavy, almost unnatural fog rolling in from the Gulf. The air was thick and suffocating, and the waves struck the fort's brick walls with a force that seemed unusually violent. At precisely 11:43 p.m., Private Thomas Duval, already noted for his nervous demeanor, saw a figure moving along the inner wall. He called out to his comrades. The response was immediate, but strange. No one answered, yet footsteps echoed back. He swore the sound was not his own. When Sergeant Whitman ran to investigate, he discovered both Duval and another soldier, James McKeown, had vanished, leaving behind their uniforms neatly folded on their bunks. The search lasted until dawn. The entire fort was scoured, including the gunpowder storage rooms, abandoned cells, and watchtowers. Nothing. Not a single footprint, scratch, or disturbance. Only the fog hung low over the bricks, as if hiding some secret from the waking world. Local newspapers later sensationalized the story, calling it the vanishing of Fort Jefferson, men lost to the night. But the garrison records remained silent on certain details. Some historians later discovered coded entries in Whitman's personal diary, suggesting he had seen more than just missing men. He saw strange lights moving in impossible patterns along the brick corridors, almost like the fort itself had a heartbeat. Chapter 8. The Enigma of the Brickwork. One of the lesser-known historical details about Fort Jefferson is its unique brick structure. Over 16 million bricks were imported from Pensacola, each stamped with the manufacturer's name. But construction records indicate a small batch of bricks was mysteriously unaccounted for. Modern researchers hypothesize. Some bricks contained hidden compartments used by garrison officials for storing experimental materials. Other bricks may have been structurally altered, creating secret passageways that were not documented in official blueprints. During the 20th century, divers exploring the fort's submerged walls found small chambers with remnants of glass vials, copper instruments, and handwritten notes, many dating back to the 1870s. These artifacts suggest that Fort Jefferson was more than a prison. It was also a site of covert experimentation, possibly related to early psychological studies, infectious disease research, or military strategy. Chapter 11. The Forgotten Experiments. Military correspondence uncovered in the National Archives reveals that Fort Jefferson's physicians conducted highly unusual studies during the post-war years, monitoring the effects of isolation on human behavior, especially on prisoners suffering from tropical diseases, observing the effects of extended sleep deprivation and light manipulation in controlled cell environments, documenting psychological reactions to apparitions, often induced using mirrors, lamps, and reflective water surfaces. One journal entry from Dr. Hamilton reads, "Subject exhibits heightened perception in low-light conditions. Reports of lights and shadows in non-existent corridors may be due to heightened neurological activity. Observation to continue. Careful documentation essential." Many historians dismiss this as early experimentation with mental health or neurological research. However, when correlated with disappearance events, the experiments take on a more sinister aspect. Could the missing men have been part of these tests? Were the lights in the fort merely illusions or manifestations of a deeper, unrecorded phenomenon? Chapter 12. The Gulf's Whisper. The Gulf of Mexico itself may have contributed to Fort Jefferson's mysteries. Weather records from the 1870s show unusually high levels of phosphorescence in the water around Garden Key, especially during September storms. Sailors reported shimmering lights beneath the waves, moving like slow, deliberate currents. Strange reflections on the fort's walls, sometimes forming shapes resembling human figures. Some insisted that the fort sings during particular tides, producing faint echoing sounds that could be mistaken for footsteps or whispers. Natural phenomena or not, these observations coincided with most recorded disappearances. Could the fort, the men, and the Gulf itself be interacting in ways no one fully understood? Chapter 11. The Civilian Witnesses. Few civilians ever dared approach the fortress at night. Yet in 1874, a Key West fisherman, Miguel Ortega, documented an encounter that remains one of the strangest in American maritime history. "I rowed close to the fort, as close as I dared, around midnight. The wind died suddenly. I saw men walking the walls, but their faces were hidden under shadows. I shouted, and one turned. His eyes, empty, staring, made me tremble. Then, just like that, he vanished. I swear it, Captain, vanished into thin air, like smoke." His report made headlines briefly, but the military dismissed it as fanciful storytelling. Newspapers, meanwhile, labeled the story another ghost tale from the Keys, ensuring that any serious investigation would be discouraged. Chapter 12. Records Lost and Found. Perhaps the most frustrating aspect for historians is the disappearance of key records. Correspondence between Fort Jefferson's officers, especially regarding experiments on prisoners, vanished from the archives in the early 1900s. Some suggest they were deliberately destroyed to cover up unethical experiments. Others claim a hurricane in 1906 washed away parts of the archive. A few persistent researchers argue that documents were hidden in secret compartments within the fort itself. Indeed, in 1992, a team of divers discovered sealed iron boxes embedded in the lower walls, containing fragments of letters and instruments. Though incomplete, the artifacts hinted at unrecorded experiments on sensory deprivation, attempts to induce hallucinations, studies of disappearance phenomena under controlled conditions. Could Fort Jefferson have been America's first experimental lab for extreme psychological research? The question remains unanswered. Chapter 13. The Modern Investigation. In 2001, a team of historians, marine archaeologists, and cryptographers launched a comprehensive study of Fort Jefferson. Using 3D sonar mapping, thermal imaging, and archival research, they discovered previously unknown corridors beneath the main courtyard, some appearing structurally sound but blocked with debris. Unexplained variations in temperature and magnetic fields, particularly near the western parapets. Artifacts inconsistent with the documented inventory, including glass vials labeled in unknown languages and journals with cryptic notations. The team concluded, Fort Jefferson remains one of the most enigmatic military sites in the United States. Historical records, eyewitness accounts, and physical evidence suggest phenomena that challenge conventional understanding of human psychology and environmental interaction. This modern confirmation adds weight to the idea that Fort Jefferson was not merely haunted, it was a site where human minds and natural phenomena intersected in ways still beyond comprehension.
Chapter 14. The Diary of Sergeant Whitman. Sergeant Elias Whitman's diary, discovered in a private collection in Key West in 1978, offers a first-hand account of Fort Jefferson's most inexplicable events. Unlike official reports, Whitman's entries are raw, candid, and unnervingly detailed. On October 3, 1873, Whitman wrote, "The fog rolled in thick tonight. Every sound is amplified. Every shadow seems alive. I swear I heard voices from the western corridor, calling names I had long forgotten. Private McKeon was with me only moments ago, and now he is gone. I cannot explain it. I do not wish to try. The men whisper of lights that move against the wind, of corridors shifting when you are not looking." This diary entry corresponds precisely with naval reports of the so-called shifting corridors, which many dismissed as fanciful exaggeration. Yet Whitman's consistency across multiple entries suggests he was documenting real phenomena, possibly linked to structural anomalies or undiscovered chambers in the fort. Chapter 15. The Experiment That Vanished. Historical researchers uncovered fragments of a military directive dated 1872, detailing experiments on prisoners at Fort Jefferson. While incomplete, the document reveals experiments involved prolonged sensory deprivation using darkened, sealed cells. Subjects were exposed to controlled light and sound stimuli, purported to test human endurance and psychological response. Note suggests some subjects vanished temporarily, with guards unable to locate them for hours or even days. Could this be the origin of the disappearances? Some modern scholars suggest that the combination of experimental drugs, sensory manipulation, and extreme isolation could have triggered temporary delirium or unrecorded neurological phenomena. Yet the precise mechanism remains unknown. Chapter 16. The Civilian Encounters. Between 1874 and 1876, civilians occasionally encountered strange occurrences around the fort. Miguel Ortega, the fisherman, returned to the fort in 1875 and reported seeing lights that formed humanoid shapes, moving with deliberate coordination along the parapets. In another account, Captain Samuel Loring, a Key West trader, claimed that Fort Jefferson vanished from view on foggy nights, only to reappear in the morning, unchanged but slightly displaced relative to the horizon. While these stories were dismissed at the time as maritime folklore, modern topographical studies show that the fort's location relative to tidal movements and fog patterns could create visual illusions, enhancing the sense of supernatural phenomena. Chapter 18. The 20th Century Rediscoveries. In 1920, a historian named Clara Jenkins discovered a set of letters hidden in a brick cavity inside Fort Jefferson. These letters, written by an anonymous officer, detailed unrecorded disappearances of guards and prisoners, strange occurrences with phosphorescent waters causing optical illusions inside the fort, references to experiments with consciousness intended to test human perception under isolation and extreme environmental conditions. These documents confirmed suspicions that Fort Jefferson had been more than a prison. It was a testing ground for psychological and environmental research, decades before such studies were formally recognized. Chapter 18. Modern Paranormal Investigations. In the 1990s and early 2000s, Fort Jefferson attracted paranormal researchers, cryptographers, and military historians. Findings included temperature anomalies along certain corridors, with readings fluctuating by several degrees within seconds, magnetic disturbances in the northern watchtower, which interfered with compasses, visual anomalies captured on night vision cameras, often coinciding with areas where historical disappearances occurred. Despite high-tech equipment and careful observation, no single explanation sufficed. Researchers were left to conclude that Fort Jefferson's phenomena may be a complex intersection of history, environment, and human psychology,
unique in the annals of American military sites. Chapter 19. The Conspiracy Theories. Over the decades, several conspiracy theories emerged. Some claim the fort was a prototype site for covert military mind control experiments long before the CIA's MK-Ultra. Others suggest unknown natural phenomena, possibly related to geomagnetic anomalies or chemical reactions in the Gulf waters, were responsible for the strange lights and disappearances. A few theorists propose extraterrestrial involvement, citing unexplained lights, temporary vanishings, and structural oddities. While these remain speculative, they underscore the fort's enigmatic legacy, a place where history, mystery, and imagination converge. Chapter 20. Legacy of the Vanishing Fortress. Today, Fort Jefferson is preserved as part of the Dry Tortugas National Park, visited by thousands of tourists each year. Yet few realize that beneath the fortress lies a legacy of disappearing guards and prisoners, secret experiments and unrecorded events, optical and environmental anomalies that defy simple explanation. Historians now agree that the fort's most enduring lesson is not its brickwork, cannon placements, or military history, but its ability to confound understanding, even 150 years later. As Sergeant Whitman's diary concludes, "The fort watches, it remembers, and perhaps, some nights, it chooses to take its secrets back into the fog." The Vanishing Fortress remains one of the most fascinating, least understood chapters of American history, a reminder that some mysteries are preserved not by chance, but by the very bricks and waters that surround them. Chapter 21. Rediscovered Artifacts. In 2015, a team of marine archaeologists and historians returned to Fort Jefferson with the latest diving and scanning technology. Their mission, to explore the submerged chambers and hidden passageways hinted at in 19th century diaries and letters. The team made startling discoveries. Iron boxes embedded in the brick walls containing vials, handwritten journals, and strange instruments. Glass lenses and reflective surfaces that could have been used to manipulate light inside the fort's corridors. Personal effects of missing soldiers preserved nearly 140 years underwater. One particularly chilling find was a journal belonging to Private McKeon, long presumed vanished in 1873. Its entries describe events from his disappearance, including interactions with lights and shadows that moved independently of human presence. McKeon wrote, "I cannot leave the corridors, though I walk them endlessly. Faces I do not know watch me. The walls breathe. Perhaps this place itself is alive." This discovery confirmed that at least some of the disappearances were witnessed and documented by the men themselves, adding credibility to reports that were once dismissed as folklore. Chapter 22. Scientific Perspectives. Modern science offers several explanations for the mysterious phenomena, yet none are entirely conclusive. Geophysical anomalies. Studies reveal fluctuating magnetic fields around the fort, particularly near its western parapets, which could affect perception and electronic equipment. Phosphorescent water and bioluminescent plankton. The surrounding Gulf waters occasionally produce eerie glows and reflections, especially during stormy or foggy nights. Isolation-induced hallucinations. Prolonged confinement, extreme humidity, and lack of natural light can trigger vivid sensory distortions. While these factors account for some occurrences, they cannot explain multiple, simultaneous disappearances witnessed by multiple men, nor the precise movements of lights along empty corridors documented in Whitman and McKeon's journals. Chapter 24. Eyewitness corroboration. Eyewitness accounts from the 1870s are remarkably consistent. Lights moving independent of any source, sometimes forming humanoid shapes. Men disappearing for hours or days, only to reappear with fragmented memories. Corridors seeming to shift or elongate, disorienting even experienced soldiers. Modern investigators have interviewed descendants of garrison families, finding oral histories that corroborate these events. Some describe dreams or memories seemingly inherited from ancestors who served at Fort Jefferson, a phenomenon known in psychology as transgenerational memory. Chapter 25: The Unresolved Mysteries. Despite extensive research, several questions remain unanswered. What truly happened to the vanished men? Were they victims of environmental anomalies, psychological experiments, or something else entirely? Are the lights and shadows purely natural, or were they manipulated deliberately? Does Fort Jefferson itself have unique physical properties that create illusions and sensory distortions still not understood? These mysteries ensure that Fort Jefferson continues to fascinate researchers, writers, and paranormal enthusiasts alike. Chapter 26: A Legacy Preserved. Today, Fort Jefferson stands as both a national park and a monument to unexplained history. Visitors are drawn to its massive walls, hidden chambers, and the haunting stories of those who vanished. Tours focus on the fort's Civil War history, yet guides often recount ghost stories and light phenomena. Researchers continue to study the fort's unique geology, structure, and historical documents. The fort has inspired books, documentaries, and YouTube series blending history, mystery, and science. As Sergeant Whitman wrote in his final diary entry, "This place watches and waits. Perhaps one day the world will understand. Until then, the fort keeps its secrets, and the sea keeps its whispers." Fort Jefferson remains a symbol of the unknown in American history, a place where human curiosity, natural mystery, and historical events collide in ways that defy simple explanation. Epilogue: Connecting Past and Present. The story of Fort Jefferson reminds us that history is not always linear. Some events remain intentionally hidden, some occur beyond the reach of contemporary science, and some are recorded only in the fleeting words of those who lived through them. Vanished men, shifting corridors, and lights in the dark challenge our understanding of reality. Artifacts and journals offer glimpses into a past that may have been far stranger than textbooks admit. And even today, as drones, sonar, and thermal cameras scan the fort, new mysteries continue to emerge, preserving Fort Jefferson's status as one of America's most enigmatic historical sites. In the end, the vanishing fortress is more than bricks and mortar. It is a living testament to human curiosity, the limits of perception, and the enduring allure of the unknown.